Proverbs 10. Proverbs chapter 10 is where we're going to be. Without giving a bunch of introductory comments, I'm going to go ahead and just read this, and then we'll jump in. And I think you'll see some things just as we read it. I'm not suggesting you. Actually, I guess maybe I am suggesting this. That if you get time and opportunity to read ahead, read the stuff before we get here, it'll be better for you. That's not a requirement. No one's asking you to check that box for anything, but perhaps you guys, we as Protestants, we believe in what's called a perspicuity of Scripture. That's a $50 word that just means that you can understand it, right? That just means that the average guy with the Spirit of God in him can understand what's written in the Word of God. And Proverbs is certainly probably more than several other books that falls into just that category, that some of the stuff just makes really good sense. So without further ado, Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon: a wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is a grief to his mother. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. Yahweh will not allow the soul of the righteous to hunger, but he will push away the craving of the wicked. Poor is he who works with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a son who acts insightfully, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who acts shamefully. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked covers up violence. The remembrance of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise of heart will receive commandments, but an ignorant fool of loose lips will be ruined. He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. He who winks the eye causes pain, and an ignorant fool of loose lips will be ruined. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked covers up violence. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions. On the lips of the one who has understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him who lacks a heart of wisdom. Wise men store up knowledge, but the mouth of the ignorant fool draws ruin near. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and the ruin of the poor is their poverty. Verse 16. The wages of the righteous is life, but the income of the wicked is punishment. He is on the path of life, he who keeps discipline, but he who forsakes reproof makes himself wander about. He who covers up hatred has lying lips, and he who spreads a bad report is a fool. When there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who holds back his lips has insight. The tongue of the righteous is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but ignorant fools die for lack of heart of wisdom. It is the blessing of Yahweh that makes rich, and he adds no pain with it. Doing wickedness is like laughing to a fool, and so wisdom to a man of discernment. What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the whirlwind passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. The fear of the Lord, or the fear of Yahweh, prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The expectation of the righteous is gladness, but the hope of the wicked will perish. The way of Yahweh is a stronghold to the one with integrity, but ruin to the workers of iniquity. The righteous will never be shaken, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. The mouth of the righteous bears wisdom, but the tongue of perversions will be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked, what is perverse. All right. So there's a lot there. And some of these things we will on purpose kind of skip because we'll pick them up later. One of the things that you might notice about the very start of this, if you look at verse 1, it says the Proverbs of Solomon. And you say to yourself, I thought it was all the Proverbs of Solomon, right? Well, you'd be right about that. Verse 1 of the entire book, the very first verse, says that these are of Solomon. So what's going on here? Literarily, you'll remember that chapters 1 through 9 are this... they are less like the rest of the book of Proverbs. So the first 9 chapters that we've been in, tend to be more topically poetic, okay? And so that's on purpose, right? That's not like, some kind of oops, situation. The writer was writing more topically at that point, and those things are attributed to Solomon. And then for the rest of the book, chapters 10 through 33, with chapter 33 maybe being the obvious exception to this rule, are much more random and much more what we tend to think when we think of Proverbs. You'll remember all the way back when we first started this, we talked about what a proverb is and what a proverb is not. Okay, a proverb generally is what we would call a pithy statement or aphorism, or just something that's a general sentence about how life normally works. In other words, the way that God has set things up, Proverbs describes how that is and how that works. What Proverbs are not, they're not what?
Promises.
They're not promises. They're not promises. I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. They are not promises. People use them that way, and that is a misuse of Proverbs. That's not the intent. That never was the intent, okay? God never intended for you to say, well, if I train up a child in the way he should go, when he's old, he'll not depart from it. Well, I had this, wicked son, did the promises of God fail? And the answer to that is no, because that wasn't a promise, okay? That was a general principle about how things normally work. It's kind of like this, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but what you can do is salt his oats. Okay, you can stack the deck in your favor. You can do things, and so that doesn't lessen the importance or the power of the Proverbs. In fact, if anything, it puts more responsibility on us to live accordingly, right? It's kind of like anything else in life. If you know how things generally work, if you know, forgive the illustration, but I think it makes the point. I'm an old classic rock person, in spite of messing up like I have been the last few weeks about confusing Leonard Skinner with with Led Zeppelin, but I don't know why I did that. Anyway, what was I talking about? We were talking about there's a song by Pink Floyd called it's called Have a Cigar, but he talks about if we show you the gravy train, boy, and it's this idea, it's a guy that's coming into a situation and they say, have a cigar, you're going to go far. It's this young guy, and they're going to show him how the world works, and they give him a cigar, and they say, if you remember the refrain in the song, if we show you the gravy train. The gravy train is these guys have figured something out about business, and they're going to show him how it works. This happens all the time in oil and gas, right? You take somebody who, doesn't know come here from Sikkim, and you teach them how to, do whatever it is in the oil field where they can make some money, right? And the key is finding somebody to help you understand how that works, right? It doesn't mean that there isn't effort involved and stuff like that. Proverbs is like that. Proverbs is, in some ways, the gravy train, in the sense that it has the keys to life. It shows us how it works, how it normally goes. And just because there are exceptions to that doesn't negate the fact that that's the way that it is. And so, with all of that being said, how things normally work in God's economy, if you know that, then what should you do? You should heed that advice, right? If you could financially, if, I don't know what the percentage is, 60% of the time, 70% of the time, 80% of the time, this stuff works and this is the way things go, then what do you do? Well, you place your bets accordingly, right? You place your bets accordingly. I mean, if you go to, I'm not a big gambler, but like if you go to the casino, I understand odds and I understand how that works. If you go to the casino, and the casino knows what the odds are, that's why they're the casino. They're fine to lose 30% of the time, right? They're fine to lose 50%, 30% of the time, or whatever the number is on that, right? That's how that works. So all that being said, let's look at what I'm going to do today is try to topically arrange the chapter a little bit in a way that I think will be helpful. We certainly, if we've got time, maybe we can go on into some other excursions here, and because there's a lot of different things we could talk about. I've narrowed it down to 3, okay? And let me look at this. I made a mistake. I'm going to change this in my notes. The first one is the fear of the Lord, verse 27. So now, we're not just going to skip to 27 and not go back to some of the other stuff. So before you panic about that. Verse 27, what is in verse 27?
Fear of Yahweh prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be shortened.
Yeah, so the fear of the Lord. Okay, by my count, this is the 7th time in the book that the concept of the fear of the Lord is mentioned. You'll remember, of course, it's been said that this is the theme of the entire book is the fear of the Lord. That the fear of the Lord, Proverbs 1:7, what? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fools despise wisdom and knowledge, right? And so it's the starting place. If you're going to be wise, if you're going to understand how the world works, you have to start with this concept of fearing God. And I'm not going to belabor this point because we've talked about it before, but I do want to just simply mention it, that is a novel concept in our society today. This is, if you look at what has changed and has caused us to go from a generally moral society to an immoral one, the starting place is the fear of the Lord, the fear of God, right? God-fearing people, right? That's a phrase that used to be used in our society. Even raising children, right? People say, we're going to put the fear of God into those kids, something like. But it is the sense of like before you can establish a sense of permanence and goodness and all the fun stuff that we all like and enjoy about family life and stuff like that. There has to be a correct understanding of the order in the family first, right? Dad is the representative of God, and your kids should fear you to a certain extent, right? Part of the problem that's going on in our society today is kid-centric parenting and this idea that what little Johnny wants is most important, and we need to cater to his, let him make decisions and stuff like that. I'll just tell you, my 2-year-olds didn't get to make decisions, okay? And by the way, I'm not scared of terrible 2s, right? 2-year-olds don't scare me, right? That's stupid. That's insane. We've got people that are, kids that are 3 years old, and they are ruling the roost because they yell and scream and throw fits. I'll never forget Shelley's grandmother one time, one of the grandkids threw themselves on the ground and started, flipping out. And Melba was just as sweet as you could possibly imagine. Okay. She was as sweet as the banana pudding she made. And she walked over, and Harrison was just, he was in full DEFCON 3 mode, right? And she just walked over and put her foot on top of him. And he realized that he was being held down, and the panic on that kid's face. And she was like, when you calm down, I'll let you up. And I went, man, that's good stuff right there. Yeah, he just took the gas right out of him. It was kind of like, Dagan does jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like, this kid's got about 30 seconds in him, right? Just let him wear himself out. And then, in our family, it was one of those situations where, if you whined or cried or, the fear of God was a real thing. My dad didn't do a lot of things well, but one of the things he did do well is like we knew that if Dad said something, that was it, right? And there was a look, right? And there was no more discussing things. That's just the way it was. And so what I'm trying to say is that that's a good thing. There needs to be order, and people need to have a good fear of God. There's no fear of God before their eyes. That's one of the judgments that's passed on people in the Scriptures. And so it's the beginning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Verse 27, the fear of the Yahweh. What's the result of fearing God? Generally speaking, what happens?
Long life.
Long life. You live a long time. Why do you think that is?
It's good for you.
It's good for you.
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom. Good for the body, good for the bones, good for everything. Okay? I like it. All right? What else?
Well, if you fear the Lord, you're gonna live a moral life. You're not gonna do a bunch of stupid stuff.
Yeah. That's right.
You gotta take stupid risk, yeah.
Right.
You take calculated,
Less
probable
hazardous.
risk, yeah.
Yeah. You guys are familiar with YOLO, you only live once, right? It's this thing, that seize the day crap and all this dumb stuff. Yeah, it's short-sighted. right? It's really short-sighted. There's no fear of God before that, right? It's just, it's my life. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do it how I want. And you only live once, so I'm going to, do a header off this cliff into a hole, while I'm in Maui. I actually had to talk my buddy literally off the ledge one time. I said, hey man, if I'm the guy telling you not to do that, we are way past what is, wow, foolishness is abiding here, right?
And that whole mindset is somewhat disrespectful too.
Yeah.
It's extremely disrespectful.
Yeah. It's my life. I'm going to live it the way that I want.
It's disrespectful and selfish.
Yeah. It's and what I ended up telling him, I said, his dumb wife was saying something like, "Jump, go for it." I'm going to be careful because he may listen to this, but
she was just wanting the insurance policy.
well, we talked about that, and I told him, I said they won't pay it because she did something stupid. There are certain things. I don't know if you know this, right? If you have life insurance, there are certain things they won't cover. If most of the time they won't cover. Skydiving and stuff like that. Like you have to have a separate insurance policy. If you die skydiving, they most likely won't pay for it, right? There are different suicide clauses, and that's a whole other deal. The fear of the Lord generally leads to a long life because whether or not, and it doesn't say, the scriptures don't say in this particular instance whether that's a natural result of the way things work or if there's some like divine supernatural intervention. And here's the thing, I don't know that it matters. Right? And perhaps it's a little bit of a combination of both of those things, right? If you don't take unnecessary risks, right, does that mean you're completely risk averse and you never do it? No, it means that you think through these things. And we all know people, right, who have died early because of a life of ungodliness, right? Whether it's liver failure, an overdose. There's a whole thing, right, called the 27 Club. You familiar with this? Rock stars who have died at 27. Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Janis Joplin. Those are the ones I can just name off the top of my head. There are others. Right? Why are these people dying at 27? Because of unrighteousness, because of making stupid decisions about how life goes. And that's like these people do this. And a lot of times it's an overdose. In the case of, well, I don't want to go down the whole conspiracy theory about Kurt Cobain, but
Yeah, you do. You just didn't.
I do, but we're not going to. Yeah. Are there notable exceptions to this? Living a long life? Of course there are. Some of you guys are nodding your heads, so you've probably got somebody in mind. I think about the most obvious one that comes to my mind is Greg Bonson. Some of you know who Greg Bonson was. Greg Bonson died at 47. I'm 47, right? And, why did God take Greg Bonson at 47? And the answer is, we don't know. And I don't know that we can know. Was it because of some besetting sin? Maybe. Maybe it was to keep him from some besetting sin. Because guys who are that smart tend to be prideful. Right? Or perhaps he was like Enoch. And he just walked with God and God took him. The old black preacher used to say, one day, Enoch was walking with God, and God said, we're closer to my house than yours. Let's just go home, And, it's corny, but we don't know. We have no idea, right? And I had the utmost respect for Dr. Bonson and really appreciate a ton of what he said and did. We have no idea why that happened. That's an exception, not the rule, right? But we see that not only does it lead to a long life, but the idea, there's a quantitative difference and there's a qualitative difference. Both of those things are true by those who fear the Lord. Right? It's a better life and a longer life. And of course, in the Old Testament, they don't have a completely developed, eschatology like we do. Eschatology is just a $50 word for, what you believe that happens to you after death and what's going to happen, later in the future. For the most part in the Old Testament, there is a sense of the afterlife and reward. But one of the worst things that could happen to you in that time, what's the worst thing that could happen to you?
Go to hell.
I'm sorry?
Go to hell.
Well, they didn't have a fully developed idea of hell for them, right?
No.
There was an idea of punishment and stuff like that. But that would be that you died early and no one remembered you. Your memory is wiped off the face of the earth. There's no permanence. There's no legacy. There's no nothing, right? And so, and you see this, there's a couple other verses in here that talk about permanence, and if we have time, we'll get to those. But this idea that fearing the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that leads to a long life of good decision making, a quantitatively better life, and the wise would do well to heed that. I thought of a couple of other, I wrote it down here, a couple of other people that died early, gangster rappers, Eazy-E, Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, all people whose lives snuffed out early. Eazy-E died of AIDS, and the other two probably murdered, And here's the thing. Apparently nobody cares because they just left those murders, they're unsolved. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it is. So, fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord leads to a long life. Verse 27, prolongs life. There is a sense in which it also is sustaining. It prolongs it. It keeps you. But the years of the wicked will be shortened. And so, even though, we're good Calvinists, we're good, believe in the sovereignty of God and all that kind of good stuff, people have responsibility. They have responsibility for their actions, for their decisions, and those decisions really do matter. Okay? Those things really do matter. Another one I want to talk about, and I want to be a little careful about this one, that we don't get too hobby horses on this one, but it is apropos to our situation. And the second one is work ethic. Look in verse 4. Verse 4, who is the one who is poor in verse 4?
The lazy.
Slack hand. You see the imagery? Somebody have a different translation, verse 4?
Mine says lazy hand.
Lazy hand.
You like that?
Yeah, oh yeah, I love it. Slack hand. Yeah. Bobby, I know you've got a different translation.
Idle hands.
Idle hands, yeah. Slack hand. Sorry, sucker. I used to have a mentor of mine. He said some of these people are sad. They're slack ass dogs. That's what he called them. Sad. They're sad, slack ass dogs. And
I forgot about that until just now. That's a good one.
yeah, that dude's just sad. That's what he would do. It was an inside joke naturally. So verse 4. Poor is he who works with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Verse 5, he who gathers in summer is a son who acts insightfully, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who acts shamefully. Look also in verse 26. Verse 26, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. The slack-handed sluggard. The sluggard, right? He moves like molasses on a cold day, right? This is the guy that Cheech and Chong made a whole bit about. He walks around slowly, waving his arm behind his rear end like he's shooing away a fart. He got no sense of urgency, right? He's got no, he's just hanging out, man. Go easy, man. He's that guy, right? Huh? The dude. Yeah. The Big Lebowski. Go easy.
Deuterino.
Yeah.
I'm never going to not think about that when I watch the movie.
Yeah. So this guy, let's see here. So let's talk about this. There's a thing. So we would call the antithesis of this. We would call work ethic, right? Having a sense of hard work, right? Nose to the grindstone. Head down, tail up. Feet moving. I'm trying to be careful about language, especially since we're about to talk about language. But my dad, this is what he said. Forgive the phrase, but it was assholes and elbows, right? It was let's go, come on, getting after it, right? Just really having a sense of determination and single-mindedness about work and focus and just really raw boned. Don't stop. Got one gear. And we're not going to we're not going to stop until it's all done, kind of thing. I think Jason Aldean even wrote a song about this, right? So it's just this dogged determinedness. Here, what you see, verse 4, is the result is what happens if a guy's lazy. In this context, what does it say?
Catches up with him.
Catches up with him in the form of
Poverty.
poverty. He's poor. He got no money, right? You got no money. You got no job. You know what that's called, Jules? A bum, right? I'm quoting Pulp Fiction. Don't, I'm not endorsing the movie, but it's just this. He's poor. Why is he poor? Is he poor because somebody's exploiting him? Is he poor because the rich are mean? Is he poor because, why is he poor?
He's sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Because he ain't doing nothing. He's a slack-ass dog, right? He's lazy. He got nothing going on. He needs to get after it. Now, what does this assume about society?
That's generally fair and how rewards work.
Yes. This verse assumes that you live in a generally righteous environment, built on this principle. This is why so many of us have so much frustration with what's going on in our current situation, where slackness, idleness, and laziness is being incentivized. By the way, that's not loving. I don't care what the Democratic platform says, and this is not a message about politics today, but that platform that says, well, people, let me tell you, I've seen guys who can't walk. I've seen people who are mentally retarded, people who have very serious problems, who work their rear ends off and get after it. And you know what? They're not looking for a handout. And they're not playing the victim card, right? Disability is no excuse for anybody. We're all disabled in different forms, right? Some of us are just dumb, right? But you can, guess what? You can overcome that, right? What happens is through wisdom and learning, there's a growth mentality and determinedness. Like you can do better and be better, right? And so this assumes a society that is generally righteous and that rewards hard work. Unfortunately, and I would just say that's one of the things that we do need to do is we need to make sure that our policies, our political policies, reward hard work. I'm not opposed to helping people who genuinely need help. The thing about it is that the people who say they need help and the people who actually need help, it takes a man of discernment to get to the bottom of that. I don't hand out money to people on street corners, especially in Midland, Texas. Let me tell you, Midland, Texas, you got no excuse. Right, and is the case in most places as well. So if that guy's poor, Proverbs says, you're poor because you're what? Lazy. And it goes on to say, the diligent makes rich. I recently, so Jet was in town last week, and we met with several different guys, and one of the guys, part of the advice that he had, which I thought was really apropos given this verse. This guy, some of you know him, but he is, he's done very, very well for himself. And his advice was this: don't talk about money, show up and outwork everybody. Keep your mouth shut and your head down and outwork everybody. And you'll turn around one day and you'll be okay. Now, pick a good industry and all that kind of stuff, all those things being said. And that's what he did, and he was smart about it. Verse 5, he who gathers in summer is a son who acts insightfully, but he who sleeps in harvest acts shamefully. Unfortunately, this idea of shame in our culture today is one of the things that has been kicked out, right? We don't want to shame anybody. We don't want anybody to feel bad. I've even heard people say from the pulpit that, guilt is, well, that's not from God. I'm like, no, sometimes you feel guilty because you are guilty, right? Sometimes you feel ashamed because you should feel ashamed. If I'm being lazy, if I'm underworking, if I'm not doing what I need to do, if I'm not taking care of business, right? I ought to feel shame. As a society, we should make people feel shame. You should make your kids and grandkids feel shame if they are being that way. It's not good. It's not okay. Everybody needs to be a contributor. Why is that, by the way? Why is it that we work? We work because God works. We work because God is working. Work precedes the fall. Before the fall, there's work. Now, I'm not telling you to be a workaholic and work your life away and and be out of balance on that. But ironically enough, Greg Bonson's son, David Bonson, just wrote a book called Full Time, and he is an unapologetic workaholic. He basically just says, hey, we're put here on the planet to work, and everybody needs to be working. Mom, dad, kids, everybody. She's managing the home, but she needs to manage it and get after it, and don't be just sitting around, feeling sorry for herself because she's, a stay-at-home mom or something. Everybody needs to be working. Everybody needs to get after it. And so there's this sense of a work ethic. Protestantism, and let me just say it a little stronger, the West was built on what's called the Protestant work ethic. It's sometimes called the Puritan work ethic. In other places, it's called the Calvinistic work ethic. It's all the same thing. And it was this idea of diligence, discipline, and frugality. Diligence, discipline, and frugality. That there are things that you say no to. That's really what discipline is. I'm going to say no to fill in the blank, and I'm going to embrace difficulty because I know that the payoff is better than the pain. There is no such thing as a pain-free life. That's part of the problem with our society today is that we only live for comfort. That's an idol, and people just want to be comfortable. Strong men, good men, wise men understand that the world is full of pain, and they choose their pain. They choose their pain. The pain of difficulty is less than the pain of basically being poor or not having enough to eat. And so it's a good lesson. Let's look again at verse 26, what it says here. I like this. If you've ever been in a supervisory situation, we've all had this experience. Like vinegar to the teeth. What does vinegar do to the teeth? Let me say it a different way. Have you ever bitten down on a piece of foil? That's what vinegar does to the teeth. Sets them on edge, right? Sharpens them and just gets you in the jaw, right? Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. What's smoke do to the eyes? It burns, just makes you irritated and mad, right? So is the sluggard to those who send him. You tell a slack-ass dog to go do something, and what does he do? He either doesn't do it at all and just ignores it, or what does he do?
Does a half-ass job.
Yeah.
That's right. You said it. Yeah.
That has to be fixed by somebody.
Yeah. He creates more work. He doesn't actually accomplish anything or produce anything like God does, by the way. God's a creator and a producer, right?
What does it say about those who sin him, though?
Well, that's a managerial problem. Right? That's a leadership problem. I'll tell you, both my girls this summer, JC was home. She's a supervisor at COM, not COM, at Green Tree at the pool, and Jess, working at the tea place and stuff like that. We both, every day when my girls leave the house, boy, this is just a day of cussing apparently. There's an old, I don't know where I got this. I think it comes from a movie. A guy says, there's two kinds of people in the world: those who eat shit and those who run shit. Right? There's people who run it and people who eat it. And every day when my girls leave the house, I look at them and they go, and they turn to me and they say, "Dad, I know, run it." Every day when they leave the house, that's what I say: run it. Don't eat it. Run it. And they do. JC, caught some static from some of the other kids that were there, because they were not doing their job. And even one of the other supervisors got upset with her because he made her look bad. You ever have that one?
Wait.
You're making us look bad.
She made him look bad?
Yes.
And he was upset about that?
Yes.
Wow.
This is the world we're living in, right? A girl, he got outworked by a girl, right? Yeah, right? Of course, that makes me as a dad pretty proud, right? I'm like, get you some, sissy boy, Yeah, you just got whipped by a girl, and the same thing, just so so-and-so, she has her complaints. She comes home and, she's like, we're supposed to be doing this, and and these people, we got customers stacked up, and we got somebody over there, basically playing grab ass. It's like, get bigger perspective about the business. She's a flunky, not a flunky, but she's a nobody there, but I told him, think like a business owner. You need to think like a business owner, right? Be Think that way. Don't think I'm just an employee getting a wage or something like that. Like smoke to the eyes, like vinegar to the teeth is a sluggard to those who send him. They're just a frustration. And you're almost better off. This is why some guys are sole entrepreneurs or just work Lone Ranger, right? Because they don't want to deal with other people. Because they have such a hard time dealing with motivating those who, don't want to be motivated. And there are some people, there is an art to this motivation thing, right? There's a whole way of going about it, and I made a career out of doing some of this stuff. But there are some people, right, that are not able to be motivated. And what do you got to do with those people? Yeah, cut them loose, run them off, As the Donald would say, you're fired, right? I mean, get out of here, adios, muchachos, don't come back. Don't let the door hit you. Those people are on the do not hire list. Okay, I've got a ton of them. With what we do. There are people that we just won't work with anymore because we've had a really bad experience. They won't do their job. They complain. They whine. They cry. They do all these things. And anyway,
They need gunnery sergeant partner.
that's right. They need gunnery sergeant. You will learn by the numbers, and I will teach you. It's just this idea of a work ethic. The West was built on this. Out of a sense of divine calling. The idea of manifest. Here's the thing. People today, they demonize, some of the Puritans and some of these guys say, well, they had this sense of manifest destiny. They believe that God had put them here to basically have shining sea, a city on a hill, all this kind of stuff. But you know what? The world is a better place as a result of that. A much better place. Those guys worked their butts off. They worked hard. Why? Because they believed in manifest destiny. So a sense of the sovereignty of God did not lead them to be like, well, it's okay, just, it's no big deal. No. They believed because they believed in the sovereignty of God, they also believed in their responsibility to be faithful before Him. And they did this. Can you be out of whack on this? And certainly in the oil field, we know guys who, I know a guy in particular, he was just gone for 30 years. If you're going to be gone, you need to bring your family with you. You need to figure out a way to make them understand and bring them on with you. This is the problem. A lot of times guys understand work, they don't understand family, and that's a whole other lesson for another time. But here what we're dealing with is people who just underwork, right? There's this work ethic that is taught. What I've observed is that guys tend to fall on one side of the ditch or the other. It's real hard to maintain the center of the road, right? Guys tend to either be, cool in the gang, hang out and underwork, or they tend to overwork and because they don't understand family, but work makes sense and they're good crate turners. They're good producers and they get a sense of life out of that. And that's not bad. That's a good thing. Okay. You need to be able to communicate that with so the additional work for that guy is learning how to relate to his wife and his kids. The other guy needs to learn how to produce more and not just be so relational. We even see this as cultures. The East and the West are divided among these lines. The East is more relational and more people-centered. They have a sense of time that is fluid, right? 8 means 8:30, 8:45. Whenever we get there, we'll start heading that way about 8 o'clock, right? In the West, 8 means 7:45 at the latest. Get your butt there, right? And don't, 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late kind of thing, right? And so which is it? Well, the West was built on the former, not the latter. I'll just tell you that. The Protestant work ethic was built on that. And this pushback that has, an Eastern influence, do people matter? Yes, absolutely. Do relationships matter? Absolutely. They're really important. And so the man of wisdom understands this balance. Let me say it a little stronger. If a guy is perpetually late, he has a problem. If he's perpetually making excuses as to why he can't get the job done, that's a problem. If there's always a reason why he didn't meet a deadline or he didn't get something done, okay, he's jacking around too much, right? He needs to get down to brass tacks, not be a frustration to his boss. So Protestant work ethic, it's a repeated theme throughout the book of Proverbs. We'll see it many, many, many more times. We'll talk about it more. But for now, let's move on to the most repeated part of this passage, chapter 10. And it is, I abbreviated it in my Bible, MLT, mouth, lips, and tongue. Mouth, lips, and tongue. No less than 16 times in 32 verses. By my count, that's half. Half the chapter is about the mouth, the lips, and the tongue. My favorite verse in all of this, and because I'm the one leading it, I get to pick it, is verse 11. The mouth of the righteous, what's the mouth of the righteous like? What is it?
Fountain of life.
It's a fountain of life. You see that picture? What's a fountain? It's a place where water bubbles up and spews out into the air in a beautiful display. It's a fountain of life. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked, so this is what's called an antithetical proverb. But the mouth of the wicked, what does it do?
Conceals violence.
Conceals violence, covers up violence. It hides death. So you see this contrast that there are those, the wise, what do? They speak life to people. Their words give life. Their words give skill. Their words, even their correction, which feels like a lashing, what is it doing? It's saving somebody from death, right? That's what Solomon's doing, right? His son, he's telling him, hey, don't do this instead, right? Certainly there's an encouragement side of this. And some of us, and I'll tell you, if you know me, you know that I'm not the best at this, but it is one of those things that I think we certainly don't want to go overboard with, to the point that it doesn't, that it's sappy or sentimental and doesn't have any power. But the idea that, there is an encouragement piece, right? The Bible has plenty to say about that. Some of you guys know Dr. Bobby, and I've talked with Bobby quite a bit about this idea of encouragement. Like it's something that he made a decision to do. He intentionally looks for good in people and points it out, and admonishes, or not admonishes it. He recognizes it, and talks to people about, hey, I noticed you're really good at this. That was great, And sometimes it's a little much, but it's like, you're never going to hear, Cody, you preached a bad message from Bobby. Maybe if he just said something stupid or something, maybe he would say something I don't know. But generally, he's just Mr. Positive about stuff and things like this. But I think about that with people, like sometimes. So the book of James chapter 3. James chapter 3, if you want to read in the New Testament, what this says about this concept, that the tongue is a flame, it's a fire, and it even takes people to hell, like they're condemned by their words and by what they say. We all know people who are perpetually negative, like they're always just like kicking the rocks, right? No matter what, right? The world is always bad. They just sit around watching Fox News all day and stay mad, And look, calling a spade is fine. Talking about trash world and all that kind of stuff, is it needs to be done, right? That's part of it. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing redeemable, there's nothing good, and that everybody's always bad all the time, right? That kind of deal. The words of the righteous are what does it say? Fountain of life. I want you to think about that. Think about the implications of that for the different spheres of relationships that you have with your family, with your wife, with your kids. While on one hand, I really hate this whole idea of, I spoke something over them and called this out in them or whatever. That just seems superstitious to me. But there is a sense in which, right, when you see something good in somebody, you want you want to say something about that. You want to make a big deal about that. Because what you incentivize, what you reward, is what you invite. Right? And people need that. Your kids need that. Your wife needs that. Your friends need that. Your coworkers need that. If you think about the different spheres of life, when the government does good things, and I know it's hard to find sometimes, you want to say thank you and good and right and all those things, right? A lot of times we just complain, right? But we don't do the other side of this thing where we're pointing out the good, a fountain of life. And I think there's a powerful imagery there. That fountain, what does it do? It gives more life to more people, and it is a beautiful thing. It's beautiful. That's what fountains do, right? They put on display what is life-giving, water, right? In addition to aerating the water and things like that, right? That's what it does. It's a fountain. It's a fountain is in some sense it's the benefit, or it's a display even of riches, right? Poor people don't have fountains, right? Rich people have fountains, right? And they do that, to show the beauty, the wonderfulness of all of that. And so here it says the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Verse 19, here's a good one. This is one of those that you could just memorize and, teach to your kids, and it would be great. And it basically just says, shut up. Verse 19, when there are many words, transgression is...
It's at some point I wrote in my Bible, shut up and listen.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, Brad. When there are many words, transgression is unavoidable. But he who holds back his lips has insight. There's a time for everything. There's a time to talk, and there's a time to shut up. And anytime you get somebody who's just a blabbermouth, okay, there's going to be foolishness. There's going to be foolishness. And so this is one of the things, me personally, that I have to be very, very careful of as somebody who, both is an extroverted sales guy and teaches. I do a lot of talking. And it would be good for me to rein that in and be careful and circumspect. What's the old saying? Better to be quiet and be thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and confirm it. You know that one? That's a modern proverb, right? And we all know people, right? What do? They sit around, they think, they're the quiet ones. And those are the guys a lot of times that I want. It's like, I want to know. I want to know what Bobby Burkholder's thinking over there. He's not saying anything. John Newton's just over there. The wheels are grinding, and I want to know. What's this guy? Yeah, shut up, stop talking so much, be circumspect with your speech. Don't be the kind of person who's constantly waiting to talk. I've had this experience with somebody the other day where you just couldn't get a word in. All they wanted, it was not a conversation.
Those are kind of exhausting.
Yes. Yeah. It was just...
Because you just breathe that side, I'm not getting anything in, I'm just going to tune out here, just turn it off.
Yeah, and you just have people that long for somebody to listen to them, and I know, on one hand, we need to do that, but on the other hand, it's like, dude, you're wearing me out. You're wearing me out. There are certain people that, just need friends, and they need people to listen to them and stuff like that, and that's fine, we can do that, but it's like, dude, I had an experience not too long ago where we were double-digit hours in the period of 2 days of just my ears hurt, and that's odd for me. You ought to talk to me. Verse 20, the tongue of the righteous is as choice silver. Again, you see this idea of a fountain of life. It's also choice silver. What's it doing? It's giving riches to those that are around it. Verse 21, the lips of the righteous, what does it say? Feed many. It's an interesting concept.
If you look,
verse 11, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. And verse 21, the lips of the righteous feed many. There's the imagery of source, at the mouth of a river, that's where the river comes out of the mountain, and that's the source of it. But the fountain, I think that's interesting because I think there's the fountain of life, because the fountain aerates a pond, gives life, because a pond that's stagnant won't have fish in it, but a pond that's aerated will, I think there's a lot of the lips of the righteous feed, and I think really, I think feeding, physically feeding and, emotionally feeding, spiritually feeding, I think the idea that and also it doesn't say, I think we need to be careful that it's not just, we just say good things. There are times I have to confront somebody on the thing they're doing negatively, and yet if you can bring a person back, and if you are righteous and you speak well, and when you confront someone about something they're doing wrong, you can lead them away from sin or help them to become wiser as well. So it's not necessarily always, oh, you're so good, but it's sometimes, hey, I think you're doing something wrong here as well.
Yeah.
Source of life, feeding, and just an interesting thing.
And even there, you're saving someone from death many times, right? You're saving, if it's one of your kids, you're saving them from folly. And if it's a coworker or a friend, you're saving them, don't do this thing, don't do this, whatever. Verse 32, the last 3 verses of the chapter are this, or actually the last 2 verses. The mouth of the righteous bears wisdom, the tongue of the perversions will be cut out. Lips of the righteous know what is acceptable. There's a time to say some things, and there's a time to be quiet, and there's a time to say the pointed thing, and there's a time for a soft word. We'll get to that one later. A harsh word stirs up anger, but a kind word levels things out. Wise men know what is acceptable. Their words don't just gush out of their heads like water from a fire hydrant. People who have no filter, I'm going to say something sharp. People who have no filter are stupid. It's unwise. It's unwise to not have a filter. See also James 3, Hebrews 13:17 says that teachers also have a responsibility because of what they say, because their words give life and death. There's a greater judgment. James tells them not many of you should be those things. I want to close real quick because we're out of time with these. These are just memorable ones that, we've already talked about the fountain of life one. That's one to memorize. 10:14, verse 14. Wise men store up knowledge. What does a wise man do? He gets more knowledge. He collects. He's a knowledge collector, right? This is his hobby. This is the thing he loves to do. Verse 12. Love covers all transgressions. If your heart's right, you're loving folks, you're on the right path. Verse 25, the righteous has an everlasting foundation. We will revisit this concept later, but the idea of a legacy and permanence and gravitas is all throughout the book of Proverbs. Okay? The righteous, verse 30, will never be what?
Removed.
What'd you say?
Removed.
Removed or shaken. Yeah. They're permanent, right? Verse 24. What the wicked dreads, what he's afraid of, what's going to happen? It's going to happen. Yep, it will come upon him. But the desire of the righteous will be granted. Well, that's a beautiful picture. Be careful what you love. Be careful for what you pray for. Be careful what you ask for. Father, make us men who store up knowledge, men who love fiercely, and who indeed are righteous. Let us take care to watch what we say. Make us men of rightly ordered affections. Make us love what is good and hate what is evil. Draw us near, push us deeper, make us wise. Use us to love our wives and our children and build our families for the eternal kingdom. This is our desire, Lord. May you grant it for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen.